Join us for another episode where real men have real conversations about leadership, relationship, morality, and dominion. Welcome to Mancode.
Well, good evening, viewing audience. I'd like to welcome everybody to another edition of Mancode. I'm excited to be here tonight. This is our third episode, so we just want to have everyone join in. First off, let me not be rude. My name is Jonathan Russell. I'm gonna let everybody go around and introduce themselves. You gentlemen jump right in.
Malcolm Crawford. Good evening, everyone.
Danielle Lewis.
What's up, everybody? I'm Austin McMurray.
All right. Thank y'all. Just again, thank you everyone for joining in, tuning in with us. Hope you're liking the session so far, vibing with us, feeling what we're talking about. And definitely we want to encourage everyone out there to hit the like button, share this, and subscribe. Don't hesitate on that because you will like this. We got a good discussion coming out tonight, so we know everybody's going to be able to feel this. So hopefully everybody's doing well. We're doing real good on this end. So we just want to, again, make sure that everyone is enjoying the content and feeding into this what you need to get from it. So, first off, how y'all gentlemen doing today?
I'm good, bro.
All right,
Great.
Doing
See,
well.
I gotta be hospitable here, so I just want to, make sure everybody on a good tip.
Yeah, doing well.
All right. So, as everyone saw from the title of our episode, we're gonna call this the man attack, and this is a part one. We really want to go into what is masculinity tonight because everybody has a different definition or a different idea of what masculinity is, some positive, some negative. But we want to kind of scale that back a little bit and just give you our viewpoint on what we view as being masculine and what masculinity truly represents. But I just want to find something out. First off, does this seem as if the tide is shifting toward a unisex society?
I definitely think, man, that there is an attack. I think with the whole Me Too and everything else, with redistribution of roles and re-identifying how people are identifying themselves in culture. All these, new terms that we're trying to, call individuals, it's no longer he and her, but it's, who are you, who are you trying to be? And so I think most assuredly, as our title says, I think there is an attack on masculinity. I think it's an attack on identity, but definitely an attack on masculinity.
Who wants to chop at that next?
Yeah.
I'll let Austin pick up on that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Austin. No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say I definitely agree with Donnell on some of those points, just like a attack on masculinity, and just like he said, an attack on identity, man. I think so many people nowadays are suffering from identity crisis, and I also think a part of it is people just wanting acceptance is a huge issue. Acceptance and equality. We look at something as far as like the pay gap in the workplace, right? Women are just looking for equality in pay. They're looking for equality in positions, the opportunity to have certain positions within certain organizations. And so I think it's a fight for a lot of things, but unfortunately, I feel like it's all kind of coupled in that category of fight against manhood, as if manhood kind of like defines all of these different categories. So I think that's kind of a part of it. It's just like a combination of things coupled into a fight against manhood sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't have a whole lot to add, but I would concur with the gentleman right there. Yeah, I think there's definitely attack because anytime the strong men stand up, there's going to be some opposition, and whether it's delivered or not. Yeah, I don't want to add too much of that right now because I got some other thoughts on some things. But yeah, I would say there's definitely some opposition against manhood. Anytime you see a strong man rise up, there's going to be some people that have their thoughts on and so forth. But yeah, so I'll leave it right there for right now.
You know, I'm gonna bite off what you just said though. When you said a strong man stands up, and I think that's a big deal because I think there's a lot of intimidation behind men being strong. Now, I can't really identify which side that's coming from, but definitely when you see a strong man, and what I mean by a strong man is not so much in the physical sense, but a man of conviction, a man who knows who he is, a man that's confident, a man really that's very grounded. I think that person is intimidating to a lot of people. And as far as unisex, I, am gonna be honest, I've seen this starting back some years in fashion. I think that was the first thing that just popped up a flag in my head. When I saw a lot of the shirts, you know, blooming out looking like dresses, when I see a lot, and this is on both ends of the fence, men's and women's fashion. I just feel like, okay, we're kind of running this together too much. I want to see my ladies look like ladies. And I know a lot of women want to see their men look like men. So I would say that's one small definition of where I see our society kind of trying to blend it. Because if you take away the manliness of men, we don't get into this a little bit too, but you kind of take away actually the family itself because that man doesn't want to assume that manly role. So I don't know how else to really add on to that any better, but y'all hit on some keys with that. Hey, that's one small now, definition. Let me dig this one out. Who's really offended by manliness and masculinity? Somebody has to be offended for it to be a problem. So who do we feel is offended by it more than anything?
I would say in most cases, it would be people who identify themselves as feminists are probably offended by masculinity the most. I think sometimes even men are offended by masculinity from the standpoint of like, how dare you put me in this box? You know, Jonathan, you mentioned dressing. How dare you tell me that I can't wear, you know, a certain type of shirt or my jeans be cut a certain type of way. So I think it's a wide spectrum of people who are offended by this term masculinity. And I think a part of that is because masculinity has been defined from a worldly sense and not necessarily a spiritual sense.
Mm.
That's good. I think it's a lack. And me personally, I think it's those people that might be offended are like we had alluded to earlier, those that don't quite understand their identity and who they are. Because once you recognize who you are, that should not add or take away from anything that's taking place. Because if you know you're a man, you don't have to go around acting a certain way or dressing a certain way. It's going to be your character. It's going to be your behavior, disposition, how you treat people, and the way that you carry yourself. And of course, if you're a godly man, you're going to live by the principles of Christ and so forth. But yeah, if you're offended by what a man is, like I say, you need to probably, I would say, look at yourself and then try to get some real understanding of what a man is and see where you fall in relationship to that. And then maybe you'll have some better understanding and it might put you at ease and maybe your offense maybe will go away.
How do people find out what a man is? Because that's a big one right there.
Well, of course, I'll just keep going for this for a second. Of course, you have to go back to the source. Anytime you want to know what something is, you have to go back to the source, the creator, the origin, those type of things, and see what that says. And of course, we know what the Bible says about a man. You know, we're created in the image of Christ. You know, as far as I'm speaking of man per se, as far as the image, you have to go back and recognize what God says about manhood and those type of things. So you would have to go back to the source and get some understanding of that. But even if you don't have that basis there, you know, you could just talk about the basic things, the foundation of a man, what a man does and so forth, and how he carries himself, how he takes care of his family, those type of things. But a real man is someone that, you know, I think just treats, you know, people with integrity and is just strong in who he is, according to, of course, what he knows and what God says he is. But you have to understand those things.
Okay. True that. Now, I'm gonna add this little piece on, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not here to attack any particular group. Everybody knows where I stand. I stand on one side, but I really feel like the offense is really with those who are jealous of men, either in the sense that you don't know what a man is. You've chosen, let's say you are a man, but you've chosen a different identity for yourself. And if I see that, I'm gonna use your term from the other week, perpetrating the fraud. If I know I'm living a lie and I see a real man, it's like, that's gonna prick me. I'm gonna just be real with you. That's gonna bother me. So I'm gonna want to attack that group because this group is making me look like I don't know what I'm doing. These strong men who actually have character, they actually live moral lives, they love God, and they're not afraid to express who they are in a positive way, that's going to offend me because that's the opposite of where I'm trying to be. I'm trying to identify with what I'm not. So I'm definitely going to be offended by what I'm running away from, in my opinion. I don't know if y'all could define it any better, but.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think a part of it goes back to what I said from the standpoint of like masculinity being defined the wrong way. Because I feel like a lot of people think masculinity is, being able to play football, being able to play basketball, being able to cut the grass, knowing how to change the oil, like those type of things. And I feel like what a man is put in a box so much. And if you don't fit whatever is in that box, then it's like you're offended by it. But I think it takes us as men of God kind of redefining what a man is. So, there's not that box on, what a man is. Like I said, getting rid of that worldly definition and getting a view on how God sees us as men.
You hit that right, because when I look at that, how the Bible describes we're all one body, but we're different parts, and each part has a function. And I see men that way because there are a lot of things that I can't do, but another man can. So I might be athletic, but I may not be scholarly. I might be hands-on with some things, but I may not be technical. Just like with us, each of us brings a different aspect to the table, but we're not all meant to be carbon copies and clones. So I think once you take, like you just said it, Austin, you take that box and you put a label on that box and say, this is what men are. Men hunt, gather fish, you do all these things that, you got to grunt and scratch, but where's the creativity? Where are your musicians? Where are the artists? So no, there's no one box for men, but you have to understand, if you understand yourself, you're comfortable being the man that you are, and you're not always searching to try to redefine it. That's
I know.
the big deal right there.
Yeah, I know I've been kind of quiet, but I know that in previous conversations I've kind of talked about how masculinity is really on a sliding spectrum versus being hardline to be kind of what you mentioned before about the athlete, the hunter gatherer, the beating on your chest, the Cro-Magnon man, that the man who brings home the bacon, the protector, all of those attributes that we subscribe to masculinity. And to Jonathan's point, when you start sliding down the scale for creativity, singers, poets, things of that nature towards the arts, then we start saying, but he's soft, or he Obama's boy, or he's it's all these other things we start to demasculinize men based on the fact that they don't fit into a list of things that we've created over time. And we've allowed media to be the pulpit for what manhood actually is. I like how some pastors have said, let me put it this way: my kids watch a lot of Disney shows, and I look at the roles even at an early age of how they portray the father to the mother. The mother is always the leader in all the families. The father is always scared of the mother. He's always afraid of the mother. And it's not saying that one should be more intimidating than the other, but what I am saying is that what they're showing is that who has the final authority, who has the final say in the house, who wears the pants in the house, who so when you start seeing how media starts to like train the mind of kids on, they're showing you family, but they're also showing you role dynamics in how things actually operate. So I've actually seen my children try to roll out some of the stuff they see on TV. And I have to tell my kids, I said, that's not how this house works. We don't, it's like, you can't go to your mother and tell on me. I'm a grown man. What do you think is about to happen that you go to your mother? You think I'm gonna get in trouble and be put on punishment? Please put me on punishment. Send me to my room. You know what I'm saying? Give me a break. You know what I'm saying? But my point basically is that they think because they see it on television that that's how real life actually is. And I think too, because over time we've seen different shows and movies and things like that, we start subscribing to some of those things as well, because it reinforces some of the things we've been hearing over time.
But
That's good.
If I can add to that right quick, I think a part of why we see those type of things on TV, Donnell, is, in marriage, right? The concept of happy wife, happy life. And
Yeah.
I say that because a lot of times when I've heard that statement, especially when I was getting, when I was engaged and going through the process before we got married, meant, man, shut up, don't say nothing. Your wife is always right. You just sit back and be quiet. Right. And that is what's being portrayed. And I definitely agree. A pastor told me this before. He said, a happy life, happy wife is true, but not at the expense of your happiness. Like, you want both parties to be able to be happy. And I think that's something that combating masculinity and what a man has created, is men neglecting their happiness too. Yeah,
it's almost like you have to that point, it's almost like you have to become non-existent in order to coexist. And I just never really subscribed to that. I mean, I lived in a household where, and my mother was a very strong person. So was my father. I never really saw power struggles in my household. We saw defined roles, and the roles were defined based on who was the best manager of which things. And I think that's how those roles should actually divvy out. I don't think roles should dictate gender. I know we say that certain roles are subscribed. So I might be good at making money. My wife may be good at administrating the funds, making sure things get paid. I might be the one good at administrating, the money, and she might be good at making money. But Austin, to your point, I think I don't know if it was a back conversation or whether or not it was, but basically you were talking about, it was in the clip. It was in the code breaker clip where you were talking about, I'll be foolish. My wife has, these degrees, I'll be foolish not to, allow her to become and be and do all that she can be and do, because it benefits and grows our whole family. But, we come out of a culture out of the 50s and like that, where it was like, it was a threatening of one's masculinity, because they felt like being that type of provider, or that person making more money than you, actually did something to one's masculinity. And being a man is so much more than how much money you bring in the house. Being a provider is not necessarily bringing money. And I think it's just understanding it doesn't mean it doesn't. Don't get me wrong, but it means much more than just that.
Right.
Sorry, John.
Go ahead.
Funny story I have in regards to what you were talking about, Donnell. So my wife and I, we're in the States temporarily for like family reasons and everything. And I was driving last week, and I was at an intersection. A brother from the nation walks up to me. He was coming to sell final call, seeing if I need anything else, right? I was like, I'm sorry, brother, I don't have any cash. And he was like, well, I want you to take this book and give it to your wife. And I looked at it, and it said How to Keep a House. And he was like, it gives you different tips on how to clean, how to do this. And my wife was sitting in the car next to me. And I was like, and he was like, yeah, you can share it with your nieces, your wife, your mom, your sisters. And I was like, yeah, my nephews, my brothers, whoever else. He was like, nah, I specifically want it for women. And he was like, because a woman is supposed to keep the house clean, XYZ. And I asked him the question. I was like, well, what do men do who aren't married and live alone? And so it's just like, it was one of those things where we talk about the term toxic masculinity and masculinity being defined in a negative light. For me, that was a prime example of it, because it basically communicates that until a man gets married or has a woman in his house, your house is going to be trifling. And I may be reaching by saying something like that, but it's one of those perception things and how people receive that information. So I just wanted to share that quick story right quick.
You did something. You hit on something. You really did. Now, what's the deal behind the phrase toxic masculinity?
Wow, that's a good one. Like I was telling you guys today, actually, when we started talking about this topic, that's the first time I really heard of it, toxic. So I did a bit of reading on it. And yeah, I mean, they'll put a name on anything pretty much nowadays. I don't know why they call it that. I guess toxic being a negative form of something. But I think a man that's being masculine, there's nothing wrong with that, as far as if you just if you're not trying to be abusive or you're doing that to make yourself look well. But I think all men should be, if that's how they comport themselves, I think that's excellent. I wouldn't want a man to walk around with his, I'm not trying to say all physical stature and the way that you carry yourself makes you masculine, but, I want a man to walk with his shoulders upright, to look you in the eye, things like that. I'm not just saying, you have to go around flexing like you're all this and all that. But as far as toxic masculinity, I want to hear some other feedback on that. I like to hear you guys' thoughts, but there's nothing wrong with a man walking in his manness, if you would.
I got a definition for it. I came up with I took this one. Toxic masculinity, the notion that some people's idea of manliness perpetrates domination, homophobia, and aggression. So that's where the toxic masculinity is based from. That if you show signs of wanting to be dominant, you're homophobic, and you're aggressive, you are a toxic man. I have to debunk that somewhat, because I don't feel like those traits line up with toxicity. I don't. I really feel like that's just something that people put out just to kind of make you docile in a way. Mm-hmm. And again, it kind of ruins your identity. Because again, being that we are all individuals, we all have a certain code structure. We're all built a certain way. So no, one man's gonna grunt, another man's gonna. So we all operate differently. So I can't really, again, I can't really base it off of that, because I feel like that's just something designed just to make men not want to stand up and assume the identity and the role of being a man. Y'all kick me on this one.
Yeah, I think in some aspects, obviously we're talking about balance, right? At the end of the day, we're talking about balance. And so I think toxic masculinity, by definition, it probably means over the top to me. That everything I'm doing, like for instance, I have a very aggressive 12-year-old in my house. Like everything he does has to be a stomp, has to be a door slam, has to be a door swing out. Everything is, so he is, and I have to tell him sometimes, like, son, you can bring that down a little bit. Like, you're standing right next to me. You ain't got to scream the words at me, man. You have to slam the refrigerator. You could just close the refrigerator. So what I'm saying is that I think toxic masculinity sometimes may be people who feel like they have to overcompensate in order to make sure that that I'm a man. So I think toxic masculinity could be abusive men who don't know how to use their words in conversations, and so they are verbally or physically abusive to women. That to me is toxic masculinity. Okay. And so I think there are things that fall into there. I think also in that definition, though, I think one of the drivers of it, and I'm not trying to stay in this particular place, I think it's when men say what a man is, and it's contrary to what other subcultural groups are trying to identify or redefine what masculinity is. That's where also the rub is for toxic masculinity. So to your point, yeah, this is masculinity. Well, if I don't agree with homosexuality, then it's toxic masculinity. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, and it doesn't make me toxic. It just makes me have an opinion and a preference and a stance. And that doesn't make it toxic. It just makes me a human being with a brain and in his own opinion. So I think it's good to push back on that and not just to receive it wholeheartedly, because I think even in it, there needs to be balance.
Well, you're right about that, because I look at it like this: in some cultures, men actually will still kiss each other on the cheek as a sign of embracing. Just like we may dap each other up, give each other the half hug, you know, and we do that just kind of like, I ain't about to put my whole arm, I ain't about to hug you like, you know, I'm hugging my chick. But again, so I can't even say that those men are effeminate, but because that's culturally what has been ingrained in them.
It's actually biblically, it's the holy kiss.
You know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you're always going to be questioning and looking for an angle to reinvent yourself to fit into what somebody wants you to be or what you think you need to be for them.
Yeah.
Right. If I could jump on that for a second too, there's a lot of misconceptions about masculinity. For example, I was listening to this one coach talk. I won't call his name out, but he was a very successful coach, a spiritual man. And he coaches in the NFL. You might be able to put it together once I'm done talking. But however, he was turned down for jobs because they said that the way that he goes about coaching would not work. He has to come in aggressive. He has to come in dominating and just talking to people like, man, it's not going to work. See, so I disagree with that totally. You don't have to be assertive. You have to be aggressive, because as Danielle was saying early, it's how you carry yourself. Your words have power. You don't have to scream and holler to make sure that everybody knows that you're in the room. If you talk and you walk with that respect and they know who you are, sometimes you can scream and shout and people still tune you out. It's a matter of who you are and so forth. So, but long story short, that particular coach was very successful, and his way worked. You know, you don't have to come in, like I say, you know, if you're not calling everybody this name and that name, you know, you can't maintain the what's it called, the locker room and so forth. So yeah, that may not answer that question, but as far as being aggressive and domineering, there's nothing wrong with like Danielle said, balance, because as men, we're supposed to walk in dominion, authority, power, things like that. But like you say, there's that balance. You're not going to be ruling with an iron fist, even in your home. You know, there has to be headship and so forth. And you do that with wisdom, knowledge, and those types of things. And that's how you really walk in your authority and get that respect that you deserve as a man. It's not beating people over the head and, you know, just being all authoritative. This is mine. You know, if you have to say it, I heard a saying that said, what's understood does not need to be said, something like that. I've heard that before. So if you know you're a man, you don't have to go around saying, I'm the man, you know what I'm saying? Those type of things.
I think that's partly insecurity too. Because if I'm insecure with myself, again, I'm always looking to redefine my stance. I have to redefine myself with this group or that group. I have to appear to be, not just be, I have to appear to be a certain way. But that's really not who I am. And I put that over the top over it. I'm gonna step out on the cliff a little bit. Growing up, I used to see a lot of cross-dressing men, not a ton, but just enough to know that they weren't straight. But their characteristics, they were more of a lady than my mother. And it's like, what's up with all the extra? So again, you're trying to be versus being what you are. And that takes you totally out of your element.
Yeah.
Now, is true masculinity a bad thing?
Say that again. Is what?
Is true masculinity a bad thing?
You said true masculinity?
Truly masculine man, is that a bad thing?
No. I mean, to say that it's a bad thing, to say it's something wrong with us.
Yeah.
I mean,
a question that I would have, sorry, Jonathan, what would you
Yeah.
guys say is true masculinity then?
So we go back to the definition again of masculinity. And to be honest with you, I think masculinity has to do with mantle. Okay. It has to do with real talk, you know, 86 all of the 86 all of the definitions that you could come up with. Masculinity is mantle and genetics. You know, said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Okay, so in creation and formation and structure, man was created first, woman was created second. The role of both were to be fruitful, multiply, and subdue. Where I get that from is where I live from, and that's basically from the word. And so if you don't subscribe to the word, then I can't tell you what your definition of masculinity and where it actually comes from. But it was a mantle that is given. And because it was a mantle that was given, authority came with that, power came with that, and assignment came with that. Now, role assignments came later as a result of task. So I think that's why people can play around with roles. And if you subscribe to roles being the defining role of masculinity or femininity, then you can redefine what masculinity and femininity is. But when you deal with it from a platform of mantle, it was what was put on the shoulder of man from foundation. You can't mess with that because creation was what brought masculinity into being.
That's deep.
That's
I
just
agree.
one black man's
You didn't
opinion.
add anything on that one. That was, yeah.
Yeah, that was deep. With that said,
Close
I
the
don't
door on
think
that.
you be too masculine.
Now, what's the alternative to masculinity? That's kind of easy one, but what's the alternative? I mean,
Lack of.
Right. And
I'm gonna say a
emasculated man.
zero-populated planet. That's what I'm gonna say. I only say that because, again, the role of a man, number one, is to protect, provide, and build a foundation for the next generation coming up. Now, I really don't see that being, since the beginning, I don't see that really changing much. But at the same time, if you take away the manliness in men, and men no longer want to be men, again, in another, I don't know how many years, you're not gonna have a population because who's gonna reproduce? Who's gonna replenish the earth?
Right.
Who's gonna raise up people to know how to live and how to navigate in the world, how to get along? So again, you take that away, you might as well just drop a nuclear bomb because you don't kill the whole thing.
Right. Jonathan, I want to go one deeper. I'm not trying to stay in deep places, but look at how the construct of that mantle was actually laid. The bloodline of every child comes from the father. Even though the child resides in the womb of a woman, the bloodline comes from the line of the father. Okay, and so the bloodline is how we identify family. So when you're looking through family trees, you need the DNA, and the DNA is always connected to the father. That's to me is always one of those things of a truth, because it should line up in every area. If it's mantle based on genetic assignment, then everything aligns with that. When in marriage, the man does it, well, I'm not talking about culturally now where men are taking women's names, but in marriage, the wife takes the husband's name because of the covenant that woman and man are cutting. And so they are coming together to create a lineage up underneath, or an extended lineage up underneath the name, up under that name. And so, as we keep looking at evidential proof of what's masculine versus what's feminine, if you demasculinize, if that's even a word, if you can take away the masculinity from men, then you are, to your point, Jonathan, changing the genetic code for why men exist. Without the semen of man, there cannot be life. You can have all the eggs you want, but without the semen of man, you can't produce life. And the dope thing about it is that he gave us the ability to be able to create life. I mean, for two individuals to come together to produce another life form that will set forth another generation in that name, that within inside of itself is covenant. That within inside of itself is Mancode. And that, to me, once again, is another fact of when he said, let us make man in our image. God, everything God created, he created it to reproduce after its own kind. And the only way for someone, even if they re-engineer themselves, they can never reproduce. They can only adopt. They can only take covenant over something that was already birthed out of the womb of someone else. So, so to me, all the arguments of I was born this way, or all the arguments of, well, I was born this, but I'm this. Like, what do you have the ability to produce? And whatever you have the ability to produce, that is the defining factor of who you are. If you could carry a baby in your womb, then you are a female. If you cannot carry a baby in your womb, you are a male. If you produce semen, you are a male. If you produce eggs, you are a female. We don't have to go about what my emotional state actually is. Because again, masculinity, if we're talking about it, is only the, how can I say, it is the expression out of the thing that I was created to be. So I don't have to act like a man. I was created to be one.
I get it. You don't got to throw the extra, you don't got to throw the mustard on top because the ingredients are already put together right.
Right.
That's interesting because when you said something just now, I was thinking, if you have a lot of same-sex couples, yes, you can adopt, you can raise not a guy's likeness, but you can raise a family, but you still had to get that child born from a man. So again, correct. You blend all the men out, you make them all into something that they weren't made to be, you're going to eventually run out of people. You're going to run out of people to adopt. You're going to run out. And again, no more planet, no more humankind. Right. So I don't see any alternative to that.
Hey, unless science got something up their sleeve.
they trying, man. They trying.
No doubt on that. That's a whole different episode, but yeah, they really, yeah.
Science is trying to be God.
Probably something we don't know about. But
and I think about toxic masculinity, right? So I Googled examples of toxic masculinity, and this was an article that came out. This was the second article, so it's high ranking. And they said that it's being stoic, being promiscuous, championing heterosexuality as the norm, being violent, being dominant, sexual aggression towards women, which Danielle talked about. We agree that is not displaying emotion, not being a feminist ally, risk taking, not engaging in household chores or caregiving. And I look at all those, and the only outlier to me is the sexual aggression towards women. But all of those things, in my opinion, are toxic humanity, like toxic traits of human. And it's like kids have aggression, right? Do we say child toxicity? Adults have anger issues. Do we say adult toxicity? Dogs have anger issues. Do we say dog toxicity? So I think it's a matter of like truly defining it. Like I think Danielle mentioned is getting as many girls as you possibly can and sleeping with all of them is a toxic trait of manhood, right? That we think manhood is. So it's too base level of a definition sometimes to just pinpoint it all at masculinity. And like I said before, it's like all of these like negative human traits, but let's just say that is masculine for the sake of tearing down manhood.
You know, the real definition of toxic masculinity is to me, is having the wrong teacher. And you could be taught, you don't necessarily have to be taught by somebody personally. You could be taught by the street.
Yeah.
You could be taught by what's on television. You could be taught by any kind of media. I think it's just having the wrong teacher. Because if I'm going through trying to figure it out on my own, number one, I don't have a blueprint on which road to start. So I'm just wandering. So every little corner and nook and cranny that I hit, since I don't know, and since I'm lost, I'm gonna take a piece of everything that I'm passing. It could be killing me as I'm going along and traveling through life. But that's what I'm learning from. So I think that's where you really get your toxicity from, is just again from bad teaching or no teaching.
Yeah, that's well said, because like I say, we're framed and we're shaped by our environment, the way that we're brought up a lot of times. And like I have to go back to the point, once salvation comes and you get your mind transformed, because before I came into Christ, I didn't really have an idea what a real man was. I was shaped, I was probably exhibiting a lot of toxic, what is it called? Toxic, that, what we're talking about? Masculinity. I'm sure I just demonstrated a lot of those qualities. I had issues with people that I thought was, a little bit effeminate. And I had issues with women and so forth, aggression, those type of things. I wasn't abusive, nothing like that. But I had different mindsets and different thoughts about those. But then once I came into Christ and started really understanding what manhood was and how a godly man acts and how a godly man is formed and shaped and so forth. And as you're being transformed by the renewing of your mind and so forth, it makes a big difference, because you made a good point, Jonathan. Like you say, hey, if that's what you see, if those are the images that you see, you can easily fall into those traps. And as we were coming up, maybe not you so much, but I'm an early 70 type guy. And what we saw on TV, man, it was some stuff, and we thought it was cool, but just bad images. And then, like you say, you have to get that stuff. You have to get rid of that. And some people, unfortunately, never get rid of it. And, and they don't have, if they're not born again, obviously they don't have the help with Christ within them to help to overcome some of those issues that they had once upon a time.
Real. Now, we can identify and demonize negative traits of some men, like bullying, sexual aggressiveness, promiscuity, etc. But why are men who exemplify good character always disregarded? Why are these men never put, on a platform and shown this is what a man really should be, not just this is not the man you want to be? Chop that up with me.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna get my little stab at it and get up off of it. I think once again it goes back to the media portrayal of what masculinity should be, based on based on generations. If you look at let me put it this way, when you outside of movies, like for instance, movies like let's take The Best Man, for those who've ever watched that movie. The Best Man was actually the first movie that was put out that portrayed educated African-American men and women post-college. That they all weren't athletes. One was an athlete, one was a poet. Female was basically working as a TV director. One was working in education with youth. They basically it was the first time that you saw the different roles that masculinity the forms of masculinity, and how you see what I'm saying, you're able to see it the first time on the screen. And for the first time for me, I saw somebody that I could identify with. It was an identifier, because I don't care who you are, people, when they look at things, they choose to look at it because they identify with it in some aspect. Whether it is, I think that's why men love sports. Some men live vicariously through sports because they play sports, so they play football or basketball. Some wish they had to play football or basketball, so they live vicariously through the men on the. Some feel like their career in high school or in college was short-lived. And so, you know, once again, I'm looking at, some people look at the success and say, I was, you know, I could have been there. Everybody is basically looking at it for different reasons outside of learning the stats and just the love of the sport or the game. I think there's a reason why certain men wear certain men's, I think it was Tony Evans that talked about that in one of his things, why men wear jerseys with other men's names and number on it, because they take on the identity or the success or the persona of that person by wearing that person's name or their jersey. I think it's innate in all of us to want to emulate someone. I think it is in us. It's just a point of who are we pointing ourselves to, or who are we setting our eyes in front of to emulate. And so I think it goes back to your point, Jonathan, when it was like, you know, poor teachers or people who we've just received information from, you know, and we've kind of fastened ourselves into the image of what we thought masculinity or a man actually is. And that, but we had to realize that it wasn't a destination, it's a journey. Like we're always becoming, you know, we come to levels of maturity, we come to levels of identity, we become more, you know, but again, it's about, once again, who are we pointing ourselves towards as far as who we trying to become.
I get it. And that's, you made a very interesting point too, because when I look at men, I'm just gonna throw one person out there that I can kind of give an example to. I'll throw two. Good character men. I can't necessarily speak for their spiritual life per se, but just on the surface, I look at Colin Powell and I look at Dr. Benjamin Carson. But as much as those men have accomplished, as many barriers as they've torn down, as many inroads as they've made, they would never be as popular, well-known, or liked as Michael Jordan, LeBron, my guy, Barry Sanders. I mean, so you have to look at what we put on a pedestal and why. You know, so it's like, are we still in that phase? And you look at in ancient times how people were more, they lauded the warrior. They looked at that warrior as that's the guy, you know, that's the protector, you know, he go out and do his thing, you know. Are we still in that phase of mindset that the architect, the builder, that person doesn't get the props? You know, that person isn't lauded as well, but this one who can show me his prowess. That's the one that's where I'm aiming my bag on.
Mm-hmm.
If I could address that thing you guys said about Dr. Tony Evans, I need to watch that thing about wearing other man's jersey, because now when I was a child, and I acted as a child and I spoke as a child, but when I became a man, I couldn't see myself, once I came into Christ, or even at the age of 22, 21, wearing another man's a name. I don't know. I would be challenged with that. Now, I don't know. That's an interesting concept, but I understand where you guys are going with that. You know,
he was challenging. He was challenging men. He was challenging men on that same topic. He wasn't an advocate for it. He was challenging men that actually wore jerseys and identified with those individuals.
And that's what I was figuring, that because I don't, you know, we talk about toxic masculinity. That to me seem like going another direction, but you know, maybe a lack of identity and so forth. I think we should respect people for, like you say, for what they do, whether it's engineering, athletically, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But just to rally around that, and you know, yeah. But let me get off that.
No, you good, because look, shoe and apparel companies have made billions
still
off of emulation of our so-called heroes. You did. Yeah. So I look at it like that. Look how many brothers, they don't own a pair of dress shoes, but they got a closet full of Jordans.
Yeah.
And it's not that they could ball good, but the identity behind that. You see what I mean? So no, you're right on point.
Yep. That's the status of the prestige.
I think it might be a generational thing, but I don't agree with that. You know, as being that wearing a jersey is equivalent to toxic masculinity. Like I said, it might be a generational thing, but it's one of those things of like, it's something, I see it as something that a part of you that I guess means something in a sense. Like, you know, Magic to me is the GOAT. No, don't nobody argue with me. Don't question it. Magic is the
We'll
GOAT.
talk after.
Nah, no need to question it. So it's like I enjoy watching Magic Johnson. I enjoy Magic Johnson, the humanitarian. I enjoy Magic Johnson, the tither, the man of God, how involved he is at his church. So to wear his jersey for me isn't like, oh yeah, I want to put another man's namesake on my back. It's just, for me, it's a piece of fashion. I enjoy Magic and I like Magic, so I'm a rock a Magic jersey. I think some people are on the spectrum of obsession and worship, but it's one of those things where you just like it. Like, for example, you know, Jonathan, you're a huge fan of firearms, right? Am I gonna say, oh, you love the person whoever created the Smith and Wesson or the Glock because that's toxic masculinity to purchase those firearms, or it's toxic masculinity to purchase Beats by Dre? It's like, I don't think it is. It's just you like the quality of it. It's something that you identify with, you enjoy it, so you just do it.
I was never trying to associate apparel with toxic masculinity. I was never trying to connect those two things together. What I was referring more so to was where one gets identity from. And so the identity piece does come from, you know, your admiration. So by what you just said, you admire this man for everything that he's done on and off the court, right?
Yeah.
So to buy his jersey and to put it on, you're paying homage to that person because of how you admire what he's done on and off the court, to the point where you was like, don't say nothing to me about him on or off the call. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, so there's a level of respect and admiration you have for him, and as a result, you're putting that on. It's like one of those things that pastors say all the time. It's like, you know, I saw a photo recently. It was like you saw people covered in snow. They were at a football stadium. They were covered in snow, and that was like, if we could only get Christians to be as devoted as these fans. You know, it's like people have a different level of devotion for different things. And so when we're talking about identity, you know, and identifying, you know, and who you are pointing yourself towards to become whatever type of man you feel you need to be. People follow or subscribe to certain people's lifestyles because they want to take aspects of that life and then try to become like that person in that particular way.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I feel like once you get to that point of like where your identity is predicated upon another person, like if I go to the gym and I'm playing basketball with Pastor Malcolm and he show up in the exact same outfit that Jordan had on in the flu game, then I'm like, all right, Pastor Malcolm, you do a little bit too much with the race. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying now. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's almost like a little boy. I'll say it's the same thing like a little boy who puts the cape. He saw Superman and he puts on a towel and then he tries to jump off the furniture, or the teenager who was watching a martial arts flick and all of a sudden he think he know martial arts. You know what I'm saying? We become conditioned by who we, I don't want to use the word idolize, but by who we admire. I want to use the word admire over idolize.
Y'all hit that on the head real good, because you made me think of something while y'all were discussing this. I remember growing up, my mother pointed this out to me and she kind of gave me a chuckle about it. In kindergarten, even in the first grade, I would go to school in my clip-on tie, in my button-down shirt, and my vest, because I wanted to look like my dad. So that's who I identified. That's who my first identification of a man was. So I saw him going to work in a shirt and tie and in a suit. So guess what? I want to walk around looking like him. And once I got wind that he had been in the military, guess what? All my toys, which probably plays a high end today, all my toys are Army based. I had all the guns, had to play knives, the grenades. I had the whole set. And that was the coolest thing. because I was identifying with the person who I put on the pedestal of relating to me, this is what a man is. So I guess my point with that is, we as men, we have a big role to play as far as what we show, because you always have somebody emulating, watching, and taking a bit of who you are on who they are, especially your youth.
Yeah.
I would say youth and men who really haven't had that example of really discovering who they are yet. Now, truly, we all know you really can't discover who you are until you find the Lord. He's really the only one that can really show you who you are. But at the same time, our responsibility is to make sure that our character is enough intact and our example is setting forth the right thing so that those behind us, they're not getting off. Even if we got off, they're not getting off. And they can see
Right.
that.
Well said.
Now, I'm gonna throw this at y'all. Is the pressure to appear manly without really knowing what it is to be a man a problem?
Well, I think there's peer pressure. Yes, there's peer pressure, and if you are challenged with who you are, the identity piece, it could be a problem. So yeah, in that respect, but for those that know who they are, I don't think you really feel that pressure. If you know who you are, I don't think there's any pressure, coming at you because you understand who you are. But if you're not quite sure, you always wonder probably to yourself, do I measure up, or do I have to go to the gym and do some reps or something? Do I have to act a certain way? And then in that particular instance, you may feel that you have to do things that you quote think that a man would do. Maybe go to a football game, go to the gym, work out, or do man type, what we think as men typical, type activities and so forth. If you feel that type of pressure, but if you really know who you are, I can be in a bookstore reading a book or whatever, and it's not going to change, how I feel about myself. You know what I'm saying? And I can even wear pink. Some men won't wear pink. But just threw that out there. You know what I'm saying? You have to know who you are. Once you know who you are, it shouldn't add or take away from your stature.
It took me a long time to rock pink. I ain't gonna front, but I rock me some pink now. But I want to thank the author. I want to thank the viewing audience. Tonight's session was this is really good. This is a really good conversation. And I'm gonna tell y'all, we're gonna continue this conversation in the next week. We got another split coming about the man attack, so definitely do not hesitate to tune back in. But in the meantime, rewatch this, share it out, like it, and definitely subscribe, because you like this. I mean, you get some real authentic conversation, each man giving his own point of view, and it's all the truth. You can't do it like it. So definitely, you go find somebody that this could be helpful for. We want you to share this out. We want you to like it, and we want you to subscribe and them to subscribe, and then come back next week for another edition of Mancode. We'll see you next time.